It's an open source, fully encrypted messaging software. Every time that I speak and I say Alexa, right now she's muted, so in the hardware itself, she's not recording. But if I unmute her, then I speak. That sound file is going to get sent up into Amazon Web Services and stored in a file. And I've looked, you just open up the app and you can scroll through and I can hit play and I can hear the sound file. So even if it's me talking and you guys are here in the room, the sounds of you being here will also be recorded. So if you are also having a conversation, that's also recorded up there. And I didn't get your consent to have this Alexa device here. I didn't. It's muted right now, so I'm assuming that that's an okay relationship. But like it's kind of like the consent aspect. And I think we talked a little bit when we were walking around in Franklinton about Toronto and the partnership with Google and Sidewalk Labs, and how this is Google going in and saying that they want to put a digital layer on top of the physical layer, so that as a customer walks around, they can automatically turn on streetlights to have scalable sidewalks that changed from being roadways to sidewalks, one-way roads entirely. You can have a lot more dynamic roads. All of the roads are solar panel, which generate heat, and that can generate more energy for the businesses around. But on top of that, they collect data, and they can get information like who's walking on it. They can use cameras and start getting demographic information. And then Google, being a company that likes to profit from data, who are they going to sell that data to? By using the space, is someone consenting with giving access for them to be collecting that data? How is Google collecting consent for collecting that data with people just interacting with a space? By bringing it to the physical geography, once we're laying digital layers on top of our physical reality, whether in the workplace or in the public spaces, how do we get consent for people, or do we get consent? Or does it just become kind of basic knowledge that you're tracked at all times? Like the phone in your pocket is recording you and that this is recording you. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think consent is a good way to look at it. You have to look at it also in the sense of who has access to these things. If you say it's Google's doing it, so is it just on Google phones? Is it just Android, which is the kind of majority of the biggest OS, right? 80% of phones in the world have Android OS. So most people have Google phones. But is it going to be if I have an iPhone or if I have something else that doesn't use Google software, am I also going to be tracked? Is my data going to be available? And if it's not, then does that pose a danger to me? Because if I'm walking down, if this is the way that if the street light's going to turn on based on my phone's movement and I don't have the right phone, well, am I not supposed to be in this area, right? It becomes a way of imposing kind of a different way of looking at the environment, of constructing a spatial environment based on your identity that's being formed by your immersion in this particular digital ecosystem, right? And so consent, and usually in the way these things happen, consent is economic. It's based on your dollars and cents, right? It's based on who has the money to go and shop in this district and who can afford the phone. If I have a Motorola Razr, one of the old flip phones, then my data, even if I'm spending money in these shops, I don't necessarily I'm not in part of this conversation. So how do you enlist people? Is it a voluntary thing? Is it opting in? Is it saying once we hit a critical mass of people with this who can engage with this particular system, then we'll implement it? Or is it saying we're going to do it and then we're going to try to construct the behaviors of people who are in this environment so that it works, so that they are integrated into it, right? So if you look at kind of Columbus is on a different kind of scenario, but the smart city kind of experiment going on here, where the city's collecting data and it's working with these private partnerships to say, well, we want people who are connected. We want a connected citizenry. We want to take this data that they're generating and use it to make the city better. But there was never, like you said, there was never a question of consent. There was never a question of people voting on this. It was just a matter of, we're going to do this. We're going to pilot this and see how it works. And if it's lucrative for the city and it's lucrative for the partners, then it becomes the default without actually thinking about who's left out of that conversation, who's left out of this idea of having a right to the city. So.
And also, it's just the general mentality is one of this what people call technological solutionism. That technology is always the solution, and so they're huge problems, right? And so to throw technology at it without thinking about the social, political, ecological aspects of things is really problematic. And in addition to that, not only is there the issue of who gets to be in these spaces where there are potential opportunities, but also what kinds of spaces have these opportunities anyway? Consent, irrespective of consent. So So in poor neighborhoods, for example, where we were walking in Franklinton, for example, you're not going to see any smart city stuff, but you will see smart city stuff perhaps in the other part of Franklinton that's the up and coming part of Franklinton.
Probably around in the old warehouse building. I can't
Mhm.
remember what that building is called. Maybe in 400.
Steam something? Steam factory?
Steam Factory, probably around the Kosai building. Probably in 400 West Rich, we'll see some stuff for the artists, but for the majority, I agree. We probably won't see much.
Right, and in addition to that, you have companies like Uber are now selling their data to local and partnering with local governments for the purpose of city planning. When it's been shown that Uber drivers will not go to certain neighborhoods, and so city planning then will end up by excluding whole neighborhoods based upon exclusions from Uber drivers because because the planning is going to be based on the data from Uber.
Mm.
So so there's a real very serious issue of exclusion in all of this. And another thing that we were talking about before is that you were saying before about the criminalization, that smart technology is being used to criminalize people in certain neighborhoods, but then in other neighborhoods it's being used to provide a parent opportunity, without consent nonetheless.
There's that juxtaposition.
Right, so that it's used for different purposes in different neighborhoods.